Commander Veltar stood at the window of Kepler Station and watched the stars. His four arms moved in careful patterns as he read the mission report for the third time. The words did not change, but he hoped they might make more sense. The Zephyrians had used a new weapon. 3 colony worlds were gone, not destroyed, gone. The weapon had turned everything alive into something else. Something that remembered what it used to be but served new masters. Veltar's mandibles clicked together. This was not how wars should work. Wars had rules. You fought with ships and guns and soldiers. You won or lost based on numbers and tactics. You did not make the enemy disappear and become part of your own army. The door to his office opened without a sound. Admiral Krixtal entered, her shell gleaming under the artificial lights. She was old, even by Krillian standards. Her left arm bore the scars of a dozen battles. "Commander," she said, "you have read the orders?" "Yes, Admiral. I do not understand them." "Explain." Veltar turned from the window. "We are to work with humans, form a joint unit, infiltrate the Zephyrian research facility on Arcturus Prime." He paused. "The success probability is 23.7%. That high?" Admiral Krixtal's mandibles showed amusement. "Our war computers give it 18%. "Then why are we attempting this mission?" "Because the humans volunteered." Veltar's eyes widened, all 6 of them. "Volunteered for a suicide mission?" "They do not see it as suicide. They see it as necessary." The Admiral moved to his desk and placed a data pad there. "These are the human personnel files. Study them. Your transport leaves in 6 hours." Veltar picked up the data pad. The first file showed a human male named Li Dongwu. The image showed a creature with pale skin and dark hair, 2 eyes, 2 arms, fragile-looking. "Admiral, humans are primitive. They have no shell armor, no natural weapons." Their reaction: "Time is slower than ours. Why would we want them for a military operation?" "Because they have destroyed 12 Zephyrian fleets in the past year." Veltar stared at the datapad. "How?" "That is what you will find out." Admiral Krixtal moved toward the door. "Commander, the Zephyrians chose Arcturus Prime as their next target for a reason. That world supplies 70% of our quantum crystals. If they convert it with their weapon, we lose the war." "Understood, Admiral. One more thing. Do not try to understand the humans. Just work with them." After she left, Veltar studied the files. Captain Li Dongwu had served in 15 major battles. He had won 11 of them against superior forces. His tactics made no sense. In one battle, he had charged directly at enemy positions instead of taking cover. He should have died. Instead, he won. Sergeant Park Ji-ho was listed as an explosives expert. His record showed that he often used materials not designed for weapons: cooking supplies, medical equipment, construction tools. Somehow, he made them explode exactly when and where he wanted. Private Kim So-ra was a medic, but her file showed combat actions. She had saved wounded soldiers while under heavy fire. She had treated enemy wounded even when it put her in danger. The reports called this illogical behavior. Private Choi Min-seok was a sniper. His accuracy rating was impossible. No being could make shots at those distances with that precision. The targeting computers said so, yet he did it anyway. Lieutenant Han Yu-jin handled communications. Her file showed she could maintain contact with multiple units while also fighting. She could process 7 different radio channels while shooting at enemies. Krillian brains could not do this without artificial enhancement. Veltar set down the datapad. Nothing made sense. These humans had no superior technology, no genetic advantages, no logical reason for their success. Yet they kept winning. The transport to the meeting point was a standard military vessel. Veltar traveled alone, as was proper for a Krillian commander. He used the time to review tactical manuals and study the Zephyrian facility layouts. The human ship was different. Veltar could hear noise from inside it. Voices, laughter, music. He had never heard sounds like that from a military vessel. When the airlocks connected, Veltar straightened his uniform and prepared for formal military protocol. The humans would probably be nervous about meeting a Krillian. Most species were. His shell armor and height of 8 feet intimidated smaller beings. The airlock opened. A human male stepped through. He was much shorter than Veltar. He wore a uniform that looked comfortable rather than formal. He was smiling. "Commander Veltar, I'm Captain Lee Dongwu." The human extended his hand. Veltar stared at the hand. This was not proper military greeting protocol. "Captain, the formal greeting between our species requires—" "A handshake works." "Fine." Lee Dongwu kept his hand extended. "We're going to be working together. Might as well start simple." Against his better judgment, Veltar reached out with one of his arms. The human's hand was warm and soft. The grip was firm but not challenging. When Lee Dongwu released his hand, he was still smiling. "Come on, let me introduce you to the team." The human ship's interior was chaos by Krillian standards. Equipment was stored in ways that made no tactical sense. Personal items were mixed with military gear. The walls had pictures and writings that served no functional purpose. In the main compartment, 4 other humans waited. They stood when Lee Dongwu entered, but their posture was relaxed. No formal military stance. "This is Sergeant Park Ji-ho," Lee Dongwu said, indicating a stocky human male. "Best demolitions expert in the fleet." Park Ji-ho nodded. "Good to meet you, Commander. I've heard Krillians are tough. Good. We'll need tough for this job. The E." Next human was female, small even by human standards. "Private Kim So-ra, our medic. She's kept us alive more times than I can count." Kim So-ra smiled. "Commander, if you get hurt, don't worry. I've treated Krillian physiology before. Your people heal faster than most." Private Choi Min-seok was tall and thin. He carried a rifle that looked too big for his frame. "Sniper?" he said simply. "I make sure the bad guys can't shoot back." Lieutenant Han Yu-jin was the last introduction. She had multiple communication devices attached to her uniform. "I keep everyone talking to each other, and to command, and to orbital support, sometimes all at once." Veltar looked at the group. They seemed too relaxed for a suicide mission, too comfortable with each other, too happy. "Captain," he said, "do your people understand the mission parameters? The probability of success is extremely low." Lee Dongwu's smile faded slightly. "We understand, Commander. 3 worlds are gone. Millions of people converted into something else. If we don't stop this weapon, it happens again." "But the tactical situation is terrible. I know." Lee Dongwu's voice became serious. "We've looked at the numbers. We've studied the facility. We know what we're up against." "Then why do you seem so calm?" Park Ji-ho laughed. "Because worrying won't help. We've got a job to do. We'll do it." Kim So-ra nodded. "We've been in bad situations before. We're still here." Choi Min-seok checked his rifle. "The Zephyrians think they're safe in that facility. They're wrong." Han Yu-jin was already working on her communication equipment. "Orbital support is standing by. We have 3 hours until we reach Arcturus Prime." Veltar felt something he had never experienced before. These humans were not following any military doctrine he knew. They showed no fear of certain death. They treated an impossible mission like a normal job. For the first time in his military career, Commander Veltar wondered if the tactical computers might be wrong. The surface of Arcturus Prime looked like a wound in space. The mining operations had carved deep scars into the planet's crust. Between the industrial sites, the Zephyrian facility rose like a metal growth. It was all sharp angles and defensive positions. Veltar studied the approaching structure through his helmet display. The tactical analysis was clear. 17 defensive turrets, force fields at every entrance, sensor arrays that could detect movement from 3 kilometers away. The logical approach would be to request orbital bombardment and level the entire complex. "Captain," Veltar said over the communication channel, "perhaps we should reconsider the infiltration approach. A direct assault from orbit would destroy the bioweapon research," Li Dongwu interrupted, "and any chance of finding a cure for the converted worlds." Veltar's mandibles clicked in frustration. "Captain, the tactical situation is impossible. The facility's defenses are designed to stop exactly this type of operation." "Good thing we're not exactly this type of operation," Park Ji-ho said with a laugh. The humans moved through the rocky terrain with surprising speed. They did not follow standard military formation. Instead, they spread out in a pattern that made no tactical sense, but somehow kept them all within supporting distance of each other. Veltar tried to follow proper doctrine. He stayed low, moved carefully, kept his weapon ready. The humans moved like they were taking a walk in a park, yet somehow they avoided the sensor sweeps that should have detected them. "How are you doing that?" Veltar asked. "Doing what?" Kim Sora replied. She was moving through terrain that should have been impossible to cross quietly. "The sensors. You are moving through detection fields without triggering them." Choi Min-seok pointed to a small device on his belt. "Motion tracker. Shows us where the sensors are looking. We move when they're not." "That is not possible. The sensors use overlapping fields. There are no gaps." "There are always gaps," Han Yujin said. "You just have to know when to look for them." Veltar checked his own sensors. They showed solid coverage with no openings. Yet the humans continued to move without detection. Either their equipment was far superior to his, or they were doing something his tactical training had not prepared him for. The first defensive position was an automated turret system. Veltar's analysis showed it could track and eliminate targets at a range of 800 meters. The logical approach would be to find a way around it or call for support fire. Li Dongwu studied the turret for 30 seconds. Then he made hand signals to his team. Park Ji-ho nodded and began unpacking equipment that looked like medical supplies and construction tools. "Sergeant, what are you doing?" Veltar asked, making a distraction. Park Ji-ho was mixing substances that had no business being mixed together. "This should get their attention." "That is not standard explosive material." "Nope, but it'll work." "Park." Ji-ho finished his mixture and attached it to a small flying device. The device buzzed away toward the turret position. Veltar watched it approach the detection range. The turrets should have destroyed it immediately. Instead, the device landed on the turret housing and exploded with a bright flash. The turrets spun wildly, firing at targets that were not there. Their sensors had been blinded by something that should not have worked. "Move," Li Dongwu said. The team sprinted across the open ground while the turrets fired randomly. Veltar ran with them, amazed that Park Ji-ho's improvised device had actually worked. His tactical computer had no explanation for how medical, supplies, and construction tools could disable military-grade sensors. The second obstacle was a force field barrier. Veltar's analysis showed it was powered by 3 separate generators. Standard doctrine required eliminating all 3 simultaneously to bring down the field. Choi Min-seok took one look at the barrier and raised his rifle. "Give me 30 seconds. Private." "That force field requires multiple coordinated strikes to..." The rifle fired 3 times in rapid succession. Each shot hit a different generator. All 3 generators exploded at exactly the same moment. The force field disappeared. Veltar stared at his tactical display. "How did you calculate the timing for simultaneous impacts over that distance?" "Didn't calculate anything," Choi Min-seok said, already moving toward the now open entrance. "Just shot where they needed to be shot. That is mathematically impossible. Maybe for your math." Inside the facility, the corridors were designed like a maze. Multiple levels, branching passages, dead ends meant to confuse infiltrators. Veltar pulled up the building schematics and began calculating the optimal route to the research levels. Yujin was not looking at any maps. She held up a small device and listened to something Veltar could not hear. After a moment, she pointed down a corridor that led away from their target. "This way," she said. "Lieutenant, the research levels are in the opposite direction. Trust me." Against his better judgment, Veltar followed. The corridor Han Yujin chose should have led to storage areas and maintenance sections. Instead, after 10 minutes of walking, they emerged into a transit system that connected directly to the research levels. "How did you know?" Veltar asked. "Listen to the air circulation. Followed the power cables. Buildings like this always have shortcuts if you know how to find them. The facility plans show no such shortcuts. Plans don't show everything." They encountered their first Zephyrian guards at the research level entrance. 6 soldiers in full battle armor, carrying weapons designed to stop infiltration teams. Veltar's tactical analysis suggested a frontal assault would require superior numbers and heavy weapons. Li Dongwu looked at the guards for 5 seconds. Then he walked directly toward them. "Captain, what are you doing?" Veltar whispered. Into his communicator, "Talking to them." Li Dongwu approached the guards with his hands visible but not raised. He moved like he belonged there. When the guards challenged him, he responded in perfect Zephyrian dialect. Veltar could not understand the words, but the guards seemed confused rather than alarmed. While Li Dongwu talked, Kim So-ra moved along the opposite wall. She carried a medical device that looked harmless. When she activated it, the guards suddenly stumbled and fell unconscious. "What did you do?" Veltar asked. "Sonic disruptor," Kim So-ra said, helping drag the unconscious guards out of sight. "Affects their inner ear. They'll wake up in an hour with headaches, but no permanent damage." "Why did you not simply kill them?" Kim So-ra looked at him with surprise. "They're just doing their job, same as us." Veltar tried to process this. The humans had infiltrated a military facility, disabled the guards, and showed mercy to enemy soldiers. This was not how wars were supposed to work. The research-level corridor stretched ahead of them. Motion sensors lined the walls. Pressure. Plates covered the floor. Automated defense systems waited to eliminate intruders. Veltar's analysis showed that crossing this corridor was impossible without triggering multiple alarms. The humans looked at the corridor like it was a minor inconvenience. Park Ji-ho pulled out more improvised equipment. This time he was using spare uniform fabric, water bottles, and communication components. He worked for 3 minutes and produced a device that looked like it might fall apart at any moment. "What does that do?" Veltar asked. "Scrambles signals. Makes the sensors see what we want them to see instead of what's actually there." Park Ji-ho activated his device. The corridor's defensive systems remained active, but their targeting displays showed empty space. The humans walked through the middle of the corridor while automated weapons tracked empty air beside them. "This is impossible," Veltar muttered as he followed them. "None of this should work." "Works fine," Han Yujin replied. "You just have to think differently about how things work." At the end of the corridor, they reached the entrance to the main research laboratory. Beyond this point, they would face the real defenses, the ones designed to protect the bioweapon itself. Li Dongwu gathered his team for a final equipment check. Each human seemed calm, focused, ready for whatever came next. They had infiltrated a military facility using improvised equipment and impossible tactics. They had disabled defenses that should have stopped them completely. Veltar realized something that made his shell armor feel suddenly cold. The humans had not gotten lucky. They had not succeeded despite the odds. They had succeeded because they approached problems in ways that the defenders could not predict or counter. The facility had been designed to stop logical, predictable assault patterns. The humans were neither logical nor predictable. "Ready, Commander?" Li Dongwu asked. Veltar checked his weapon and equipment. Everything was in order. But for the first time in his military career, he was not sure that order and logic would be enough. "Ready, Captain?" As they prepared to enter the laboratory, Veltar wondered what other impossible things these humans might do, and whether he would understand any of it. The laboratory doors opened to reveal something that made Veltar's tactical computer shut down and restart twice. The space beyond was not a normal research facility. It was alive. The walls pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat. Organic growth covered the metal surfaces, reaching toward the ceiling in twisted patterns. In the center of the room, a massive tank held something that looked like liquid shadow mixed with silver light. "What is that?" Veltar whispered. "The bioweapon," Li Dongwu said. His voice had lost its usual casual tone. "Or what's left of the original research." Around the tank, figures moved in the shadows. They looked like Zephyrian researchers, but something was wrong with their movements. They walked too smoothly. Their heads turned too far. When one of them looked toward the entrance, Veltar saw that its eyes were completely black. "They're infected," Kim So-ra said. She was scanning them with her medical equipment. "But not dead. The weapon changed them into something else." "Can they be cured?" Veltar asked. "Unknown. I'd need to examine one up close." "That would be extremely dangerous." "Yes, it would." Before Veltar could protest, Kim So-ra was moving toward the infected researchers. She carried a medical scanner in one hand and a tranquilizer in the other. Her approach was slow and careful, like she was approaching a wounded animal. The infected researcher noticed her when she was 3 meters away. It turned to face her with movements that were too smooth and too fast. Its mouth opened to reveal teeth that had been replaced with something that looked like metal needles. "Get back!" Veltar called, raising his weapon. "Wait," Kim So-ra said. She held up her medical scanner. "I'm not a threat. I'm trying to help." The infected researcher tilted its head. For a moment, it looked confused. Then it spoke in a voice that sounded like multiple people talking at once. "Help? Yes, we remember help. But we serve different purpose now. We serve the weapon." Kim So-ra stepped closer. "What did it do to you?" "Made us better, stronger. We know things we never knew before. We understand how to make others like us." The researcher lunged at Kim So-ra with speed that should have been impossible. Veltar's weapon was already charging to fire. But Kim So-ra was faster. She rolled aside and pressed her tranquilizer against the researcher's neck. The infected being collapsed. But instead of becoming unconscious, it began to change. Its skin started growing the same organic patterns that covered the walls. The tranquilizer was being absorbed and converted into something else. "The weapon adapts," Han Yujin observed. She was monitoring the laboratory's systems from a safe distance. "It learns from everything we do." More infected researchers emerged from the shadows, but these moved differently than the first one. They had learned from watching Kim So-ra's tranquilizer attack. They approached from multiple directions, staying out of range of her medical devices. "They're sharing information," Veltar realized. "The weapon connects them somehow." Park Ji-ho was setting up explosives around the tank in the room's center. But every time he placed a device, the infected researchers adjusted their positions to protect it. They were learning his placement, patterns faster than he could adapt them. "This isn't working," he called out. "They figure out my tricks as fast as I make them." Choi Min-seok tried to provide covering fire, but the infected researchers moved in ways that made targeting impossible. They flowed like liquid, splitting apart when he aimed and reforming in new positions. His impossible accuracy meant nothing against enemies that refused to stay in one place. "The weapon is using their knowledge against us," Veltar said. "Every tactic we try teaches it how to counter that tactic." Li Dongwu studied the situation for 30 seconds. The infected researchers were closing in from all sides. The weapon in the tank was growing brighter, like it was feeding on the conflict. Standard military doctrine would call for immediate withdrawal. "Kim So-ra," Li Dongwu said. You said the infected aren't dead. Correct. They're changed, but the original personality is still there somewhere. Can you reach it? Maybe. Why? Because I have an idea that's either brilliant or suicidal. Li Dongwu walked toward the largest group of infected researchers. He moved slowly, with his hands visible. When they surrounded him, he did not fight, back, or try to escape. I want to talk to whoever you were before, he said loudly. The infected researchers stopped moving. They looked at each other with expressions that seemed almost confused. We are what we chose to become, they said in unison. We serve the weapon willingly. I don't believe you. Li Dongwu's voice was calm but firm. I think you're trapped. I think the weapon is using you and part of you knows it. One of the infected researchers stepped closer. For a moment, its black eyes flickered with something that looked like normal color. Help. Us, it whispered. Then the black returned, and it stepped back. There, Li Dongwu said. You're still in there. Fight it. Cannot fight. Weapon is too strong. Weapon knows everything we know. Does it know everything I know? The infected researchers tilted their heads in unison. You are not connected. Weapon cannot read you. Yet. That's right. Which means I can do things it can't predict. Li Dongwu began doing something that made no sense to Veltar. He started telling jokes, bad jokes, the kind that made people groan instead of laugh. Why did the Zephyrian cross the space lane? To get to the other side of illogical, the infected. Researchers stared at him. Their synchronized movements became less coordinated. What's the difference between a quantum computer and my grandmother's cooking? One follows logical patterns. More infected researchers emerged from the shadows. But they were moving independently now instead of as a coordinated group. The weapon in the tank flickered as if confused. Keep going, Kim Sora whispered. It's working. A human, a Krillian, and a Zephyrian walk into a space bar. The bartender says, What is this? Some kind of joke? Some of the infected researchers began laughing. Not the synchronized sound they had made before, but individual laughter. Each one different, each one personal. The weapon in the tank began pulsing erratically. The organic growth on the walls started retreating. The weapon can't process humor, Han Yu-jin realized. It's too illogical, too personal. Park Ji-ho used the distraction to plant his explosives, but instead of placing them around the tank, he put them on the organic growth covering the walls, the parts that connected the infected researchers to the weapon. Why there? Veltar asked. Break the connections, you break the control. Choi Min-seok provided cover, but the infected researchers were no longer coordinated. They moved like individuals again, which made them predictable. His shots found their targets, using tranquilizer rounds instead of lethal ammunition. As more researchers were separated from the weapon's influence, they began helping instead of fighting. They remembered who they were before the infection. They remembered what they had been trying to do. We were trying to stop it, one of them said to Kim So-ra as she treated his wounds. The weapon was supposed to be contained, but it got loose. It convinced us that joining with it was the only way to survive. What can you tell us about destroying it? Li Dongwu asked. You can't destroy it. It adapts too quickly. It learns from every attack. Then how do we stop it? The researcher looked at the tank where the weapon continued to pulse and grow. You don't stop it. You confuse it. Make it forget what it's supposed to do. Park Ji-ho's explosives went off, severing the last connections between the weapon and the infected researchers. The organic growth on the walls withered and fell away. The weapon in the tank began moving erratically, like it was searching for something. But the victory felt temporary. The weapon was still active, still dangerous, and now they had learned something terrifying about it. It did not just kill or convert its victims. It made them willing participants. It convinced them that joining with it was the right choice. How? Do we fight something that turns your own people against you? Veltar asked. Same way we fought it here, Lee Dongwu replied. We do things it can't understand, things that don't make logical sense. Kim So-ra was still treating the rescued. Researchers. These people can help us. They know the weapon's weaknesses. What weaknesses? Veltar asked. It can only understand patterns it has seen before. It learns from logic and tactics and strategy, but it can't learn from things that have no pattern. Choi Min-seok was monitoring the approaches to the laboratory. We have more company coming, infected soldiers this time. Through the laboratory's observation windows, Veltar could see armored figures moving through the corridors. But these were not confused researchers. These were trained soldiers who had been converted by the weapon. They moved with military precision, but something was wrong with their coordination. They're still learning, Han Yujin observed. The weapon is trying to understand military tactics by using them. Then we need to teach it the wrong lessons, Lee Dongwu said. As the infected soldiers approached the laboratory, Veltar realized something that chilled him more than the bioweapon itself. The humans were not just fighting an enemy, they were fighting an enemy that could learn from them. Every tactic they used would be analyzed, understood, and turned against them. Yet somehow they were winning, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by doing things that could not be analyzed or understood. The infected soldiers moved through the corridors with perfect military precision. Veltar watched them on the security monitors and felt something break inside his tactical training. These were not random converted civilians. These were professional warriors who had been absorbed by the weapon and were now using everything they knew to hunt the infiltration team. They know every standard breach protocol, Veltar said, studying their approach patterns. Every defensive position, every tactical response we might use. Good thing we're not using standard protocols, Lee Dongwu replied. The rescued Zephyrian researcher, now identified as Dr. Colvin, was working frantically at a computer terminal. His hands shook as he tried to access the weapon's research. Data. The weapon core is 3 levels down, he said. But the path is impossible. The entire route is filled with infected soldiers who know every possible approach. How many? Park Ji-ho asked. 47. All former military personnel. All, sharing tactical knowledge through the weapon's network. Veltar's shell armor felt cold. 47 experienced soldiers with shared knowledge and coordinated tactics. This is not a mission. This is suicide. Maybe for normal tactics, Kim So-ra said. She was still treating wounded researchers, but her attention was divided between medical work and tactical planning. What if we don't use normal tactics? Explain. The weapon learns from patterns. Military training creates patterns. What if we do things that have no military training behind them? Choi Min-seok was cleaning his rifle, but he looked up at her words. You mean fight like civilians? I mean fight like humans. Before Veltar could ask what that meant, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. The infected soldiers had found their location. Through the laboratory's reinforced doors, he could hear coordinated movement. Professional, efficient, deadly. They'll breach this room in approximately 4 minutes, Dr. Colvin said, monitoring their approach. Standard protocol would be gas grenades, followed by coordinated assault from multiple entry points. Then we leave, Lee Dongwu said simply. Captain, there are no other exits. This laboratory is designed to be sealed in case of contamination. Then, we make an exit. Park Ji-ho was already moving toward the laboratory's exterior wall. He placed his hands against the metal and closed his eyes like he was listening to something. Load-bearing wall, he said after a moment. But the supports are concentrated here, here, and here. He pointed to 3 specific locations. Blow those, and this whole section comes down. That would destroy the laboratory, Dr. Colvin protested. All the research data would be lost. Research data won't help us if we're dead, Han Yujin said. She was downloading as much information as possible onto portable storage devices. I can save some of it. Sergeant, that wall breach will take us directly into a 300-meter drop, Veltar said, checking the facility schematics. Yep. Park Ji-ho was already mixing his improvised explosives. Good thing we brought repelling gear. We brought repelling gear? Kim So-ra held up what looked like medical tape and surgical tubing. We brought medical supplies. Same thing if you're creative. Veltar watched in amazement as the humans began converting medical equipment into climbing gear. Surgical tubing became rope. Medical tape became anchoring points. Instruments designed to save lives were transformed into tools for impossible escapes. This equipment is not rated for that kind of stress, Veltar said. Doesn't matter, Choi Min-seok replied. It just has to work long enough. The first explosion echoed through the laboratory doors. The infected soldiers were beginning their breach. Veltar could hear the coordinated countdown of a professional military assault. Park Ji-ho's wall charges detonated at the exact moment the soldiers breached the laboratory doors. The exterior wall blew outward in a cloud of debris and twisted metal. Beyond it, the cliff face of Arcturus Prime stretched down into darkness. Go! 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 Lee Dongwoo shouted. The humans rappelled down the cliff face using medical equipment that should have snapped under their weight. Somehow Kim So-ra's improvised anchoring system held. The surgical tubing stretched but did not break. They descended into the darkness while the infected soldiers fired at them from above. Veltar followed, trusting equipment that defied every safety protocol he knew. As he descended, he could hear the soldiers above trying to coordinate pursuit. But their tactical training had not prepared them for this. Who would escape by jumping off a cliff using medical supplies? The weapon can't learn from this, Dr. Colvin said over the communication channel. He was descending beside Veltar, looking terrified but determined. No military doctrine covers this scenario. At the bottom of the cliff, they found themselves in the facility's lower maintenance levels. These were service tunnels designed for automated systems, too small for normal military operations, perfect for an impossible infiltration. The weapon core is through there, Dr. Colvin said, pointing to a narrow access tunnel. But the tunnel is filled with security sensors, and there are infected maintenance workers inside. How many? Lee Dongwoo asked. Unknown. The weapon converted the entire maintenance staff. They know every tunnel, every system, every hidden passage. Han Yu-jin was scanning the tunnel with her communication equipment. I'm reading 17 heat signatures. They're positioned to cover every approach angle. 17 infected workers, who know the tunnel system perfectly, Veltar said. This is tactically impossible. Unless we don't try to fight them, Kim So-ra said. Explain. They're workers, not soldiers. They were converted while doing their jobs. What if we help them finish their jobs? Before anyone could protest, Kim So-ra was entering the tunnel. But instead of carrying weapons, she carried medical supplies and tools. She moved like she belonged there, like she was reporting for a work shift. The first infected worker she encountered was trying to repair a damaged power coupling. The infection had given him enhanced knowledge, but it had not changed his basics. Nature. He was still trying to fix things. That coupling is installed backwards, Kim So-ra said, approaching slowly. The power flow is reversed. The infected worker looked at her with black eyes. You, our intruder, should report you. I'm here to help with the repairs. The coupling needs to be rotated 180 degrees. The worker stared at the coupling. The weapon's enhanced knowledge confirmed that Kim So-ra was correct. His basic personality, the part that wanted to fix things properly, was stronger than his instructions to report intruders. Yes, coupling is wrong. Help fix? Kim So-ra worked alongside the infected maintenance staff, repairing systems while gradually leading them away from the tunnel entrance. The weapon had enhanced their technical knowledge, but it had not changed their fundamental desire to do their jobs correctly. She's using their own nature against the weapon, Dr. Colvin whispered. The infection enhances what they were, but it can't completely replace it. One by one, the infected workers became focused on repair tasks instead of security duties. Kim So-ra's medical training had taught her to understand how people worked, and she was using that knowledge to reach the parts of them that the weapon could not control. "Path is clear," she reported over the communication channel. The team moved through the tunnel while the infected workers continued their repairs. They were no longer guards. They were just people trying to do their jobs correctly, even under impossible circumstances. At the end of the tunnel, they found the weapon's core. It was not what Veltar had expected. Instead of a massive machine or obvious target, they found a room filled with what looked like growing crystal formations. Each crystal pulsed with light that matched the rhythm they had seen in the upper laboratory. "This is it," Dr. Colvin said. "The weapon's true form. It grows like a living thing, but it thinks like a machine. How do we destroy it?" Park Ji-ho asked, studying the crystals for weak points. "You don't. Every attack teaches it how to defend against that attack. Every attempt to destroy it makes it stronger." "Then what do we do?" Han Yu-jin was scanning the crystals with her communication equipment. "They're transmitting, constantly, sharing information between all the infected people." "What if we change what they're sharing?" Lee Dongwoo asked. "What do you mean?" "The weapon learns from everything it absorbs. But what if we give it something it can't process? Something that breaks its ability to learn?" Veltar began to understand. "You want to infect the weapon with something that cannot be analyzed or understood." "Exactly." Choi Min-seok was setting up his rifle, but instead of aiming at the crystals, he was aiming at the communication relay points. "If I can disrupt the network connections at just the right moment, and I can feed contradictory information into the system while the connections are unstable," Han Yu-jin added. "What kind of contradictory information?" Dr. Colvin asked. Lee Dongwoo smiled. "Human information, emotions, dreams, things that can't be reduced to data patterns." As the team prepared their impossible assault on the weapon's core, Veltar realized something that changed his understanding of warfare forever. The humans were not just fighting an enemy that could adapt to any logical attack. They were fighting it with illogical attacks, with humanity itself. And for the first time since the mission began, Veltar believed they might actually win. The weapon's core chamber filled with light as the crystals began pulsing faster. Veltar's tactical computer registered massive data transfers flowing between the crystalline structures. The weapon was preparing for something. "It knows we're here," Dr. Colvin said, his voice tight with fear. "It's calling all infected personnel to this location. We have maybe 5 minutes before this place is surrounded." "Then we better make this count," Lee Dongwoo said. Han Yu-jin was connecting her communication equipment directly to the crystal network's relay points. Her hands moved with impossible speed across multiple control interfaces. "I'm in their system, but it's fighting me. The weapon is trying to trace my connection and convert me through the network." "Don't let it," Kim So-ra said. She was monitoring Han Yu-jin's vital signs with medical equipment. "Your brain activity is spiking. The weapon is trying to establish neural contact." "I can handle it. Just need a few more seconds to establish the feedback loop." Choi Min-seok had his rifle trained on specific crystal formations. "Tell me when. I can disrupt their physical connections, but only for a moment." Park Ji-ho was placing charges around the chamber, but not on the crystals themselves. "These go on the support structures. If this doesn't work, we bring the whole place down." "That would trap us here," Veltar pointed out. "Better than letting this thing escape to convert more worlds." Through the chamber's observation windows, Veltar could see infected soldiers and workers converging on their location. Dozens of them, all moving with coordinated purpose, all sharing tactical knowledge through the weapons network. 2 minutes, Dr. Colvin warned. "Ready," Han Yu-jin announced. "Feedback loop established. Whatever we feed into the system now will be shared with every infected person simultaneously." "What exactly are we feeding it?" Veltar asked. Lee Dong-woo moved to the center of the chamber. Memories. Human memories that can't be reduced to data. I don't understand. The weapon absorbs knowledge and tactics and logical information, but it can't process things that aren't logical. Dreams, emotions, personal experiences that only make sense to the person who lived them. Lee Dong-woo placed his hand on one of the crystal formations. Immediately his eyes rolled back and his body went rigid. The crystal began pulsing with chaotic light patterns. He's sharing his memories directly, Kim So-ra said, monitoring his vital signs. But this is dangerous. The weapon could convert him instead. Not if we all do it together, Park Ji-ho said. He placed his hand on another crystal. One by one, the humans made direct contact with the weapon's network. Each one began sharing their personal memories and experiences, things that made no tactical sense, childhood memories, personal relationships, dreams about impossible futures. Veltar watched the crystal formations begin flickering erratically. The weapon was trying to process human emotions and memories like tactical data, but emotions could not be categorized or weaponized. Dreams could not be analyzed for strategic value. It's working, Dr. Colvin said, monitoring the network traffic. The weapon is trying to understand what it's receiving, but human experience doesn't follow logical patterns. Through the communication network, they could hear the infected personnel becoming confused. Their coordinated movements were breaking down as they experienced random human memories that had no connection to their current situations. I remember birthdays, one of the infected soldiers said over the communication channel. Why do I remember birthday cake? Dreams of flying, another added. I never wanted to fly. Why do I want to fly now? The weapon's core began pulsing with conflicting rhythms. Each human memory it tried to process created contradictions in its logical framework. It could not understand why humans would risk their lives for people they had never met. It could not comprehend the concept of fighting for principles instead of tactical advantage. The infection is breaking down, Kim So-ra reported. The weapon can't maintain control while processing illogical information. But the strain was affecting the humans too. Sharing their memories directly with an alien intelligence was taking a physical toll. Han Yu-jin's readings were becoming erratic. Lee Dong-woo was bleeding from his nose. We can't maintain this much longer, Dr. Colvin warned. We don't need to, Choi Min-suk said. He was still targeting the crystal formations. The network is destabilizing. One precise shot should cause a cascade failure. Wait, Veltar said. If you destroy the network while the humans are connected, it might kill us, Lee Dong-woo said. His voice was strained, but determined. But it will definitely stop the weapon. There has to be another way. There is no other way. This is what humans do. We sacrifice for others. Kim So-ra's medical readings were showing dangerous levels of neural stress for all the connected humans, but she was still monitoring everyone else's condition while sharing her own memories with the weapon. Her memories of healing people, of choosing to help even when it was dangerous. The weapon doesn't understand sacrifice, she said through gritted teeth. It processes everything as tactical advantage. It can't comprehend doing something that helps others at your own expense. Park Ji-ho's memories were flooding the network with experiences of building things, creating solutions from impossible materials, making something work even when logic said it should fail. The weapon tried to analyze his improvised tactics, but could not understand the creative thinking behind them. 30 seconds until cascade failure, Choi Min-seok announced. The infected personnel throughout the facility were becoming more confused. Their shared tactical knowledge was being overwhelmed by human memories that made no logical sense. Some of them were beginning to remember who they had been before the infection. I was a teacher, one of them said. Why was I shooting at people? Teachers don't shoot at people. I had a garden, another added. I grew flowers. Why don't I remember flowers? The weapon's core began fluctuating wildly. It was trying to purge the human memories from its network, but they had become integrated too deeply. Every attempt to remove them created more contradictions. "Now," Lee Dongwu said. Choi Min-seok fired. His shot hit the central crystal formation at the exact moment when the network was most unstable. The crystal shattered, and the cascade failure spread through the entire system. The humans were thrown back from the crystal formations as the network collapsed. The weapon's core began dissolving, its crystalline structure breaking down into harmless mineral components. Throughout the facility, the infected personnel collapsed as the weapon's control over them was severed. But instead of dying, they began waking up. The weapon had not destroyed their original personalities. It had only suppressed them. "Status report," Veltar said, checking on the humans. "Alive," Lee Dongwu said, struggling to sit up. "Confused, but alive." "The weapon is neutralized," Dr. Colvin confirmed. "Its network is completely destroyed. The infection is broken." As they made their way out of the collapsing facility, Veltar tried to process what he had witnessed. The humans had defeated an enemy that could adapt to any logical attack by using attacks that were not logical. They had won through sacrifice, creativity, and emotional responses that could not be quantified or predicted. "Commander," Lee Dongwu said as they reached the surface, "you've been quiet. Everything okay?" Veltar looked at the human captain. This small, fragile being who had just risked his life to save worlds full of people he had never met, who had defeated an impossibly advanced weapon using nothing but human nature. "Captain, I need to revise my understanding of warfare." "What do you mean?" "I have always believed that victory comes from superior tactics, better weapons, or numerical advantage. But you achieved victory through methods that my tactical training says should not work." Lee Dongwu smiled. "Maybe your tactical training needs updating." "Perhaps it does." As their rescue ship approached, Veltar realized that the real terror he had experienced was not the bioweapon or the infected soldiers. It was the recognition that everything he thought he knew about combat, strategy, and warfare was incomplete. The humans had shown him that there were forces more powerful than logic or tactics: hope, determination, the willingness to sacrifice. For others, the ability to find solutions where none should exist. "Captain," Veltar said, "when we return to Kepler Station, I would like to request a transfer to joint operations with human forces. Any particular reason?" Veltar watched the stars through the transport's viewport. "I want to learn how to fight like a human. It's not something you can learn from books or training manuals." "Then how do you learn it?" Lee Dongwu considered this for a moment. "By remembering that there are things worth fighting for that can't be measured or calculated, and by never giving up, even when logic says you should." Back on Kepler Station, Veltar filed his mission report, but he found it impossible to properly categorize what he had witnessed. The humans had not just defeated an enemy. They had redefined what victory could look like. In the officer's lounge, Lee Dongwu found Veltar staring out at the stars again. "Thinking about the mission?" Lee Dongwu asked. "Thinking about the future," Veltar replied. "And about how much I still have to learn." Lee Dongwu sat down beside him. "Want to grab a drink? We can talk about it." For the first time in his military career, Commander Veltar made a decision based not on protocol or logic,